Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to New York Metro Weather's severe weather briefing number 2 for Hurricane Sandy. Things have changed a little bit over the last 24 hours, and we are expecting to give an update every day or so, maybe twice a day as the storm gets closer. But we wanted to give you the update for Thursday a little earlier in the day so that you guys can process all the information and all that. Hurricane Sandy is currently north of Cuba in the Bahamas. Hurricane warnings out for the Bahamas, you can see on the imagery here on the title page. With tropical storm warnings for the eastern Florida coast, the storm's going to expect to go north and then drift a little bit to the north and west, not making an impact on Florida directly, but the wind field is pretty expansive. And then you look to the north and you see the forecast track is pretty ominous for most of the northeast United States. Things have come into a little bit more clear focus today, and we're going to go over that a little bit. Here's the satellite imagery of Hurricane Sandy as she's now. There was a real period of rapid intensification last night when the storm was just south of Cuba when maximum winds reached 110 miles an hour, and the satellite presentation was impressive. Crossed over Cuba, went through a little bit of a struggle, but maintained its inner core. It looks very impressive. You can see the outflow already up to the Florida coast and into the southeast United States, and the movement is north at 16 miles an hour. This is the development today, and we'll take a look at what's happened here. These are the ensemble members. We went over a little bit of this yesterday, but a little bit of a refresher. This is the NCEP, so GFS-based ensemble guidance. So it's a lower resolution of the GFS run over and over and over and over to get varying results. We're expecting varying. You're not going to get the same thing every time you run a forecast model. But the important thing to do when you're using ensembles is you look at the mean and you look at the outliers, and that's when you get a good idea as to what could happen. So there's a lot of stuff still on the table here. You can see one runaway here. AP10 runs away all the way to Portugal, and then on the left side of the envelope, a couple of ensemble members bring the storm into the Chesapeake. But the mean track, very ominous for our area now, with the majority of ensemble members showing the recurve of Hurricane Sandy as she phases with an upper level trough over the central United States and bringing the storm back into the northeast United States. So that's our area of concern today. This is our graphic that we used yesterday to explain what's going on, and you can see the hurricane off the coast here, top left panel showing the 500 millibar heights and vorticity, so the middle of the atmosphere where a lot of the interaction happens with the energy in the atmosphere. You can see the tropical storm off the southeast coast and the trough over the central United States coming into phase with it, and that's where the concern occurs. As that phases in, this storm will get pulled back towards the coast. It could theoretically make landfall. We talked yesterday about how the European model, which is on the left, we're using yesterday's run here as an example, was phased and the GFS model was out to sea. Well, now this afternoon the GFS model has come around to the Europeans' idea of phasing the storm. So now we have many of the major models that we use to forecast the weather showing a significant storm off the east coast. The GFS brings the storm into the Twin Forks of Long Island late Tuesday, while the European brings it in early Tuesday into the southern New Jersey shore. This is the NAM model. We just figured we'd throw this out there. It's at the very end of its run. The NAM only runs out 84 hours in advance. It's a high-resolution forecast model, but you can see there's no real difference here between the NAM, the Euro, and the GFS. The NAM also agrees. You can see the phase occurring here on the top left panel. And if you look at the bottom right panel, very high precipitation rates, ready to move into New Jersey with the storm system off the coast. Here's another visualization of GFS's idea, just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. These are sustained winds just above the surface in miles an hour. And you can see 65-mile-an-hour winds with the storm system before it backs to the west. So that would impact eastern Long Island, the Long Island Sound, the Connecticut coast, and probably much of New Jersey as the storm moves back to the west. And gusts obviously could be higher than this with such a dynamic system. It's always important in meteorology to try to explain what's causing this whole situation, and we use this graphic of the European model to show what's happening. The reason why the storm is backing to the west, it might not make a lot of sense to people. The important feature is actually to the north of the storm system. You can see this is the anomaly in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, so departure from normal, I guess you could say. And you can see to the north, over Newfoundland and the North Atlantic Ocean, there's an anomalous ridge. It's the most anomalous feature in the hemisphere on this graph. And you can see that the feature is actually pressing down on the pattern in the Atlantic Ocean. So typically, when this phase occurs with a tropical storm and the trough coming in from the central United States, the storm could actually probably escape a little bit to the north and east. Maybe the phase would occur a little bit further out in the ocean. But with this block pressing down, the storm cannot go to the north and east. So Sandy is forced to swing around, take on a north heading, and then the trough from the central United States, is able to swing underneath Sandy and actually help her pull back a retrograde to the west. And when this interaction occurs, keep in mind, if it does occur, the storm will strengthen fairly rapidly. Here's the sea surface temperatures. This was also on yesterday's presentation. But you can see the area of warm water that Sandy is currently in. You can see why the rapid intensification occurred yesterday near Cuba. And as she heads north, the waters are actually cooling off. But notice the Gulf Stream, which extends from Florida up to the north and east, just off the coast, to the outer banks of the Carolinas. Coincidentally, the models all have Sandy following a path near the Gulf Stream to help her maintain her strength. So we've laid out what data we have been looking at today. And here are the facts. I mean, this first line remains the same from yesterday. The forecast remains highly uncertain. Whether or not all the models are showing a hit with the storm coming into the New Jersey coast or not, the storm is still 100 hours away. So our confidence still remains very low, but it is growing, and the threat seems to be growing over the last 2 days especially. The model guidance is beginning to come into a better agreement, but that doesn't mean that it's a sure thing. So, we're not trying to get you guys to hit the panic button and start running around in circles. But be aware of the potential and what's going on. That's what our job is, to inform you of that. The impacts, we went over this yesterday as well. If the stronger model solution is verified, we'll be dealing with a great amount of potential hazards. High winds, 50 to 70 miles an hour, probably higher, with higher gusts. Prolific heavy rain. The storm system is loaded with moisture. We'd be talking several inches of rain in many areas. Beach erosion, onshore winds with the storm, especially if the storm is to our south. Rapid beach erosion. We forgot to include storm surge in here. There's a ton of water coming in with this storm system as it backs in from the Atlantic Ocean. And obviously power outages with downed trees. If the weaker model solutions were to verify, which appears to becoming less and less likely, although still a possibility, we could get nothing if the storm goes out to sea, or we could see some moderately strong winds with some rain. So we've hit the point now where we are 100 hours away, so things still remain uncertain, but you can start the very early preparations to remain ahead of the storm. Remember that there's still leaves on the trees. Trim your overgrown tree branches and bushes as well as trying to clean leaves out of your gutters. Make sure your home is stocked with the essentials, batteries, lights. Make sure everything is ready. Your sump pump if you have one. If you live near the water, take your boat out of the water if you have one. Make sure everything is secured outdoor with your furniture. Take down toys and decorations, and just be prepared. Clear your gutters out. If you're going to have heavy rain and wind, that should be, a gimme. That should be something that you should definitely do. And especially with all these leaves falling, make sure you're on top of that, because any backup is just going to make anything worse should this storm come into the coast. So that's where we're at right now. We wanted to give you guys an update as to what's going on with Hurricane Sandy. Definitely not time to hit the panic button yet, but we are approaching a time frame here for us as meteorologists where we have to start getting the word out about the potential now that all the forecast models are starting to show the storm phasing and coming back to the coast early next week. So we'll be updating you guys. We'll be with you guys throughout the whole process. If you have any questions, Facebook, Twitter, email, you know the deal. We'll be quick to answer you, and we'll be in touch most likely tomorrow with another video update. Take care.